Hello, good day, good morning, whichever you want. How's it going? Welcome to Wednesday, day 3 of our quarantine spectacular, I guess we could call it. Nice to see you this morning. Cheers. Today we're picking up with Romeo Act 3, Scene 3. This is a scene between Romeo and Friar Lawrence, mostly. Remember Romeo, after Act 3, Scene 1, he took off. Benvolio said, go, 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 and he took off. He took off running, and we haven't seen him since. Of course, we just had one scene. But, so now we pick up, we find out where he is. We find him in hiding at Friar Lawrence's cell, or in Friar Lawrence's cell. In the beginning, Friar Lawrence is going to call him forth. So depending on the director, where Romeo is, hiding in the closet or, just off stage or behind a door or whatever it is, Friar Lawrence is going to pull him forward. This is where he's been hiding. And he's going to tell him what the prince's sentence was. So he hasn't heard. Remember, he left before the prince came out and said that he was banished. So Romeo hasn't heard this news yet. Romeo, just spoiler alert, not going to take it well. All right. So let's get going. We are at Act 3, Scene 3, Friar Lawrence's cell. Again, we're on the SparkNotes page. I'm reading the original text. You may read the modern text afterwards if you feel like you didn't fully understand us reading it together. Feel free to read the modern text as well. Okay. But we want to hear the beauty of the original language, obviously. And there's a lot of really good stuff in this scene. So, enter Friar Lawrence. Romeo, come forth, thou fearful man. Affliction is enamored of thy parts, and thou art wedded to calamity. All right, so he calls him a fearful man. For Elizabethans, fearful meant full of fear, yeah, but also terrible or fatal. And I think that probably all three of those meanings could apply to Romeo right now. He has had something terrible happen to him. What happened was fatal. Tybalt and Mercutio died, and could be threatening his life. And he is also a bit full of fear in that he's hiding right now, right? So he says, come forth, thou fearful man. Affliction is enamored of thy parts. Affliction is some kind of a curse. Basically, a curse is in love with you, in love with all of your parts. And you are wedded to calamity. You are wedded to disaster. And of course, he just wedded him 3 scenes ago. But now he's saying he's wedded to calamity. Enter Romeo. Father, what news? What is the prince's doom? What sorrow craves acquaintance at my hand that I yet know not? Okay, so what kind of sorrowful, what's the next bad thing that craves acquaintance on my hand, meaning is trying to make friends with me? What bad thing's trying to make friends with me now? Friar Lawrence. Too familiar is my dear son with such sour company. I bring thee tidings of the prince's doom. What less than doomsday is the prince's doom? Talking about the end of the world, doomsday. What less than the end of the world could the prince's sentence have been? Friar Lawrence. A gentler judgment vanished from his lips. Not body's death, but body's banishment. Ha! Banishment! Be merciful, say death. For exile hath more terror in his look, much more than death. Do not say banishment. Hence, from Verona art thou banished. Be patient, for the world is broad and wide. Romeo. There is no world without Verona walls, but purgatory, torture, hell itself. Hence banished is banished from the world, and world's exile is death. Then banished is death mistermed. Calling death banishment, thou cutt'st my head off with the golden axe, and smilest upon the stroke that murders me. So needless to say, Romeo doesn't take it well. He says that as soon as Friar Lawrence says banishment, Romeo says, be merciful, say death. He says there's more terror in that word banishment than there is in death. Don't say banishment. Friar Lawrence says, be patient, the world is huge. It's a big, broad, beautiful blue world, and Verona's just one city in it. So be patient. And Romeo refutes it and says there is no world without Verona walls. He says outside of Verona's walls is purgatory, torture, hell itself. Purgatory is a place where the dead suffer torment, kind of in between heaven and hell. But he even says hell is there too, outside Verona as well. Purgatory, torture, and hell. He says banished is banished from the world because Juliet is his world, right? He says it's death mistermed. I might as well be death. He says, calling death banished, you cut my head off with a golden axe and smile on the stroke that murders me. Smile and say, oh yeah, this is just fine. Okay. Friar Lawrence is not having it. He rebukes Romeo. He says, oh, deadly sin, oh, rude unthankfulness. Thy fault our law calls death, but the kind prince, taking thy part, hath rushed aside the law, and turned that black word death to banishment. This is dear mercy, and thou sees it not. So he calls it rude unthankfulness, right? Thy fault our law calls death. Basically, he says, you committed a crime that's punishable by death. The prince did not punish you with death. He punished you with banishment. So he says he turned the black word death into banishment. He says it's a mercy. Why are you not seeing this? Romeo, still not seeing it. 'Tis torture and not mercy. Heaven is here, where Juliet lives, and every cat and dog and little mouse, every unworthy thing, live here in heaven and may look on her, but Romeo may not. More validity, more honorable state, more courtship lives in carrion flies than Romeo. They may seize on the white wonder of dear Juliet's hand and steal immortal blessing from her lips, who even in pure and vestal modesty still blush as thinking their own kiss is sin. But Romeo may not. He is banished. Flies may do this, but I from this must fly. They are free men, but I am banished. And sayest thou yet that exile is not death? Hadst thou no poison mixed, no sharp ground knife, no sudden mean of death, though ne'er so mean, but banished to kill me? Banished. O friar, the damned use that word in hell, howling attends it. How hast thou the heart, being a divine, a ghostly confessor, a sin absolver, and my friend professed, to mangle me with that word banished? So Romeo doesn't take it well. He says it's torture, not mercy. Friar Lawrence was trying to tell him it was mercy that he was given this sentence, and he says it's torture. No, heaven is here. Juliet is heaven, and I have to be apart from her. He says the lowest of the animals, from a cat to a dog to a little tiny mouse to even a fly, a carrion fly, like a fly that eats carrion, which is dead meat. So he goes to the lowest of the low creature that he can possibly imagine. And even the flies get to see Juliet, get to land on her hand, get to kiss her hand, get to steal blessings from her lips, which is kind of gross because he's talking about flies right here on her lips. But anyway, that leads to the pun here that flies may do this, but I from this must fly. So he's saying all the most unworthiest creatures of Verona can look at Juliet and have it better than he does because he's going to be banished and apart from Juliet, and Juliet is heaven. And he says, and you say, exile isn't death. He says, if you didn't have a poison or a knife or some other way to kill me, this is the best way to kill me. Say that I'm banished. He said the damned use that word in hell, and howling attends it when they hear it. He's like, how do you have the heart? A ghostly confessor, again, that just means a priest, a ghostly confessor. Juliet's called him that before. He says that you're this priest, you're divine, you absolve sins, you're supposed to be my friend, and yet you've mangled me with that word banished. So it's a powerful verb, mangled, just torn apart on the inside, just completely mangled with that word banished. So, yeah, not taking it well. Friar Lawrence. Thou fond man, hear me a little speak. Oh, thou wilt speak again of banishment, Romeo says. I'll give thee armor to keep off that word, adversity's sweet milk, philosophy, to comfort thee, though thou art banished. Okay, so he's like, I'm going to give you something that'll help you, some armor, to keep off that word. And he says, philosophy, turn to philosophy. He says it's adversity's sweet milk. It's the sweet beverage that can take care of adversity, philosophy, and let that comfort you through your banishment. Oh, Romeo. Yeah, no. He says, yet banished, Hang up philosophy. Unless philosophy can make a Juliet, displant a town, reverse a prince's doom, it helps not, it prevails not. Talk no more. Oh, then I see that madmen have no ears, Friar Lawrence says. Romeo, how should they, when that wise men have no eyes? Friar Lawrence, let me dispute with thee of thy estate, thy standing. The estate is their standing. He says, I'm going to argue with you about your standing. And Romeo refutes him. He says, thou canst not speak of that thou dost not feel. Wert thou as young as I, Juliet thy love, an hour but married, Tybalt murdered, doting like me, and like me banished, then mightst thou speak, then mightst thou tear thy hair and fall upon the ground as I do now, taking the measure of an unmade grave. Okay, at this point, Romeo falls to the ground and is literally measuring, not literally measuring, but he is saying that he's taking the measure of an unmade grave. He's like, this is the amount of ground that you need to bury me, because this is death. And he rails against Friar Lawrence and talks about how he doesn't feel the kind of things that young people feel, that you would feel if you were as young as I was, if Juliet was your love and you just married her and then you murder Tybalt, as you do, and get banished. And he says, then you might understand, but you don't know what it's like to be me unless you're me. And guess what? You're not me. So he says, if you were me, you would be on the ground now measuring your grave too. So Romeo's already speaking about death. He's already speaking about suicide as an option, talking about taking the measure of an unmade grave. Okay? As he's on the ground, traditionally crying, as I've seen it in most performances, he's crying and we hear a knock from within. Friar Lawrence says, arise, one knocks. Good Romeo, hide thyself. Remember, no one's supposed to know that Romeo is here. And now there's a knock. It's not great. Friar Lawrence asks Romeo to hide. Romeo says, not I, unless the breath of heartsick groans mist-like enfold me from the search of eyes. And we hear another knock. Friar Lawrence, hark how they knock. Who's there? Romeo, arise. Thou wilt be taken. Stay a while. Stand up. Run to my study. By and by. God's will, what simpleness is this? Romeo's refusing to get up. Friar Lawrence shouts again to the visitor. I come, I come. Who knocks so hard? Whence come you? What's your will? The door opens and we see the nurse. Well, actually, the door hasn't opened. Nurse says, let me come in and you shall know my errand. I come from Lady Juliet. We hear from within the set. Friar Lawrence opens the door. Welcome then. And enter the nurse. Oh, holy friar. Oh, tell me, holy friar, where is my lady's lord? Where's Romeo? Sorry. Friar Lawrence tells her, there on the ground with his own tears made drunk. So Friar Lawrence has just had it with Romeo right now. That's a great line there, isn't it? Doesn't take much explanation, but yeah, he's there on the ground, getting drunk on his own tears. Well said, Friar Lawrence. The nurse sees it and says, oh, he is, even in my mistress' case, just in her case. So she's saying Juliet is doing the same thing. She says, oh, woeful sympathy, piteous predicament. Even so lies she, blubbering and weeping and blubbering. Stand up, she tells Romeo. Stand, and you be a man. For Juliet's sake, for her sake, rise and stand. Why should you fall into so deep an O? The O, of course, is his sorrow, his O, like the shape of his mouth. Why fall you into such a deep O? Like you're just crying, you're bawling there. And she's saying, stand up, be a man for Juliet. Romeo says, nurse, ah, sir, death is the end of all. Speakest thou of Juliet? How is it with her? Doth she not think me an old murderer, now I have stained the childhood of our joy, with blood removed but little from her own? Where is she, and how doth she? And what says my concealed lady to our counselled love? So Romeo has risen at this point. When she tells him to rise, he does. Basically gives him the steel in his spine that he needed, that Friar Lawrence wasn't able to shake that grief out of him. But Nurse was able to do it, and it's because she's related with Juliet. So he says, what's the news from Juliet? Does she just think me an old murderer because I've stained the childhood of our joy with blood removed but little from her own? He's talking about Tybalt's blood there, right? Blood removed but little from her own. Tybalt is her cousin. So he says, I stained our childhood joy with her cousin's blood. He says, where is she? Does she just think me an old murderer? What says my concealed lady to our cancelled love? So he's already thinking that their love is over because of this. Nurse says, oh, she says nothing, sir, but weeps and weeps, and now falls on her bed, and then starts up, and Tybalt calls, and then on Romeo cries, and then down falls again, as if that name, shot from the deadly level of a gun, did murder her, as that name's cursed hand murdered her kinsman. Okay. So he's saying that Juliet, when she hears his name, she falls down crying as if she'd been shot from a gun, as if that name was shot from the deadly level of a gun and murdered her. He says that name's cursed hand, his, murdered her kinsman. Oh, tell me, friar, tell me, in what vile part of this anatomy doth my name lodge? Tell me that I may sack the hateful mansion. So he asked the friar, where is this hateful part? Where is my name that I can cut it out? And he draws his own dagger, and there he is threatening physical harm against himself. So a very intense moment in the play as he pulls the dagger out and is threatening stabbing himself. Friar Lawrence reacts with fervor and fury. He says, hold thy desperate hand. Art thou a man? Thy form cries out thou art, but thy tears are womanish. Thy wild acts denote the unreasonable fury of a beast. Unseemly woman in a seeming man, and ill-beseeming beast in seeming both. Thou hast amazed me. So keep in mind that Shakespeare is not the most progressive person as far as we would, view him today, right? He says that he is acting womanish. Probably not something we would say now. You're acting like a woman. Maybe some people would, but, generally, he is saying that women are emotional. Romeo's being very emotional, right? But even he's saying he's being bestial in his fury. He is unreasoning. He's not using his mind. He is acting like a beast. And he says that you're an unseemly woman and a seeming man and an ill-beseeming beast in both. You have amazed me, he tells him. He goes on, by my holy order, I thought thy disposition better tempered. I thought you had a better temper. Your disposition is your demeanor, the way you carry yourself. I thought you had a better temper. He says, hast thou slain Tybalt? Wilt thou slay thyself? And slay thy lady that in thy life lives by doing damned hate upon thyself? Why railest thou on thy birth, the heaven and earth? Since birth and heaven and earth all three do meet in thee at once, which thou at once would lose. Fie, fie, thou shamest thy shape, thy love, thy wit, which, like a usurer, abound'st in all, and usest none in that true use indeed, which should bedeck thy shape, thy love, thy wit. Thy noble shape is but a form of wax, digressing from the valor of a man. Thy dear love sworn but hollow perjury, killing that love which thou hast vowed to cherish. Thy wit, that ornament to shape and love, misshapen in the conduct of them both, like powder in a skilless soldier's flask, is set afire by thine own ignorance, and thou dismembered with thine own defense. What, rouse thee, man? Thy Juliet is alive, for whose dear sake thou wast but lately dead. There art thou happy. Tybalt would kill thee, but thou slewest Tybalt. There art thou happy. The law that threatened death becomes thy friend and turns it to exile. There art thou happy. A pack of blessings light upon thy back. Happiness courts thee in her best array. So we're going to stop here because this is a long speech, right? This is the friar condemning, giving this condemnation to Romeo about his attempt at suicide. Think about what words maybe had the most effect on Romeo. The friar says that Romeo shames his good looks, his shape, his declarations of love, which he just said love, and his intelligence, which he called wit. He says he shames these things. He says he's like a stingy moneylender. That's what he meant by usurer. Where is that? here. He says, "Watch like a usurer abounds in all, but useth none in that true use indeed." So he says he's like a stingy moneylender, a usurer, because although he possesses those excellent qualities in abundance, he doesn't use them properly. Okay? So he says that he has all of these gifts, and yet he's wasting them. And he says he gives them his blessings. He says, Juliet's alive. Okay? Tybalt would have killed you. You killed him. Okay? Good. He says the law that would have killed you for killing Tybalt has become your friend and turned into exile. You should be happy. You have a pack of blessings on your back. And yet you are here crying your heart out. Friar Lawrence continues. But like a misbehaved and sullen wench, thou poutest upon thy fortune and thy love. Okay? So again, he calls him a wench, a misbehaved and sullen wench who's pouting about your fortune and your love. You have fortune, you have love, and you are here pouting about it. He says, take heed, for such die miserable. Go, get thee to thy love, as was decreed. Ascend her chamber hence, and comfort her. But look, thou stay not till the watch be set, for then thou canst not pass to Mantua, where thou shalt live, till we can find a time to blaze your marriage, reconcile your friends, beg pardon of the prince, and call thee back with 20,000 times more joy than thou wentst forth in lamentation. Dogs! Sorry about that. Had to regulate a little bit on the canines. All right, so he has a plan, Friar Lawrence. He says, stop behaving like a misbehaved wench. And he says, if you keep on complaining about your fortunes, such people die miserably. He says, get thee to thy love. Get you to Juliet, as we talked about, as was decreed. Ascend her chamber, so climb that rope ladder we talked about. Hence, comfort her. You know what he means by that. So consummate the marriage. But look, thou stay not till the watch be set. So don't stay till the day's watch come in. He says, because then you won't be able to pass to Mantua. If they find you here, it's death. If they find Romeo in Verona, it's death. So he says, before the watch is set, basically before the sun comes up, you need to get yourself to Mantua, where you're going to live. So Mantua is not far from Verona. This is where this is where Romeo is going to set up while he's in exile. And he says, Friar Lawrence says, until we can find a time to blaze your marriage. That means announce your marriage. To announce your marriage, reconcile your friends, bring all your friends back. He says, then we'll beg pardon of the prince and call you back, Romeo, with 1,000 times more joy than the way that you left in lamentation. A lamentation is a song of sorrow, a dirge, usually sung after someone dies. You have a lamentation. So he says, then we'll call you back with 1,000 times more joy. Okay? He says, go before, nurse, commend me to thy lady, and bid her hasten all the house to bed, which heavy sorrow makes them apt unto. Romeo is coming. So Friar Lawrence tells nurse to make sure everyone's in bed. Romeo is on his way. Romeo is going to ascend the rope ladder and comfort Juliet. Okay? Nurse says, oh, Lord, I could have stayed here all the night to hear good counsel. Oh, what learning is. My lord, I'll tell my lady you will come. Do so, and bid my sweet prepare to chide. So he's expecting that she will scold him, Juliet. Nurse says, here, sir, a ring she bid me give you, sir. And she gives Romeo Juliet's ring. Hie you, make haste, for it grows very late. All right, so she gives that token of love that Juliet had given nurse for Romeo. And so Romeo is assured once again of Juliet's love, which he was doubting. The nurse exits. And Romeo says, how well my comfort is revived by this. Okay? The ring that he sees here. So this ring is a symbol, right? And this is an example of a universal symbol versus a story-specific symbol, because universally, the ring means marriage, love, right? But in this story, the ring represents something even more than just their marriage, just their love. It's a reassurance that Juliet has given. It's a symbol of her solidarity with him, that she has sided with Romeo and not with Capulets, not with Tybalt and her family. Okay? So Romeo says he's reinvigorated by it. Then Friar Lawrence says, go hence, good night, and here stands all your state. So he's recapping. Either be gone before the watch be set, or by the break of day disguised from hence. Sojourn in Mantua, I'll find out your man, and he shall signify from time to time every good hap to you that chances here. Give me thy hand. 'Tis late. Farewell. Good night. Romeo says, but that a joy past joy calls out on me. It were a grief so brief to part with thee. Farewell. Okay? Okay? So, Friar Lawrence recaps. He says, you're going to go to Mantua. You're going to sojourn in Mantua. That means to take a journey to Mantua. He says, I'll find out your man, your servant. Balthazar is his name. You're going to find your servant. And he will let you know from time to time every good thing that happens here. Every good happening. So every good event, he's going to come and let you know what's going on. Friar Lawrence takes his hand like a father, like a priest. Give me thy hand. He says, 'tis late. Farewell. Good night. Perhaps he blesses him here as a priest would. And then Romeo says, but that a joy past joy calls out on me. It were a grief so brief to part with thee. Beautiful rhyming couplet there. Ends it. Farewell and exit. Okay. My dogs are driving me nuts. So this is going to be the end. Because that's Lily in the background, and she will not shut her bark hole. So, Act 3, Scene 3. Tomorrow we're going to finish Act 3. Scene 4 is really short. And then Scene 5 is the final scene in Juliet's bedroom between Juliet and Romeo. So it's a beautiful scene. It's a beautiful poetry. My dogs are not creating beautiful poetry. They are creating a bit of a cacophony. So we are going to call this a day. Happy Wednesday, people.